Welcome to the Champion Within podcast, your go-to spot for unlocking a winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete chasing greatness, a parent cheering from the sidelines, a coach leading the charge, or an educator shaping young minds, this pod party is for you. Hey, if we haven't met before, I'm Kate McCauley, your pod party host, former educator turned mindset mentor. I get to meet people where they are and get them to where they want to go. Expect awesome guest conversations with athletes, some solo chats to level up, and always leave this pod party with quick, powerful strategies to help you and your crew push past limits, embrace challenges, and crush goals both on and off the field. Let's tap into the champion within, because greatness is just a mindset away. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me on The Champion Within. I am first time on location recording a live podcast today. I got to tell you that I am really inspired by this person every single day. But today I got to sit in and watch him speak to a group of students at Villanova Law, and he took it to the next level. I cannot wait to share this guest with you. Johnny Sneh is with me today, and he is going to tell you a little bit about his journey. He has so many different things going on in his life. We could probably do a whole series with him. I know you are going to lean in, listen, and learn. Get ready and steal the wisdom and mindset he has to share. Johnny, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming to our event. Excited to be talking to you.
I was just talking to one of the professors at Villanova here, and she said, "How do you know Johnny?" I said, interestingly enough, it was from youth football, not when you were an athlete. I'm not that old, all of my listeners. I was a volunteer there. My husband is still a volunteer. He's a better human than me. My kids are old and out of the program now, but John had wood ice company amongst all of the other things that he does, just a small part of his life. We were purchasing from local businesses there. That's how we originally got connected. We did some fundraisers. He gave back to the community in so many ways to our football organization. That's how we originally met. And I'm sure John does remember this, but my oldest son had a crazy situation with an appendix and ended up staying in CHOP for 2 weeks. John brought a really cool gift for him over, and it is something that my son has always held on to. And John is just the type of person where when you meet him, you're inspired in so many different ways. I had to have him on my podcast because I know he's going to inspire you. That's actually how we first met. I've continued to be inspired through social media and different things that he's doing. Let's start there. Let's talk about your impact on the community. What were you doing at that point? And then we'll come to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So at that point, I was trying to just see how I can give back to the community. I'm always focused on technology, and I've always been pretty big in technology. And sometimes technology is far away from the community because the community sometimes just want you to go to the food bank, local food bank, and hang out and help out and the little water ice stands and, just giving back to the kids and being able to see their joy and their smiles and then doing something entrepreneurial within the neighborhood that's very local. I've never done anything like that before. All of my entrepreneurial exposure has always been on large businesses or technology-based startups. So it's really good to get into that stage and get to meet people and get to meet different people, right? Because I grew up in Drexel Hill, so Ridley was not a place that I got to meet people. So that was really nice. I remember that time when your son was sick, I was traveling for business in South Africa. And I went to different places. And within South Africa, there was a group of ladies that we've met, local entrepreneurs. So when I travel to these countries, I like to eat their local food. I like to meet their people. And they were telling me about some heritage things they had to take back, souvenirs. The one lady was handcrafting this event, and she said, this is from South Africa, but it's also from West Africa. And it's like a windmill. It talk about healing. It talk about physical healing, emotional healing. And I remember where I grew up in West Africa, we had some similar things. So I thought that was going to be a really good thing for him as he recovered, when he thinks about, because first is the physical, right? And he's feeling it and it sucks. But then it's also emotional. Mm-hmm. And then it's mental because you keep it even when you're healing. It reminds you of that time and it reminds you of time of peace. So I thought that would be the great little small thing, I can bring back from my trip. So I always look for some things like that.
It was really kind of you. and it stayed with us. It actually is hanging on his wall still.
Oh, that's
I'm not sure if you remember this, but he had gold cleats at that time and he was playing lacrosse. And I remember you making a comment on social media because you were always saying, you know, nice things to the local kids. As you were saying, you got to know some of us through those sports organizations. You were like, oh, I love those gold cleats.
Yeah.
And the item, what was the name of that item? Did it have a name?
No, I didn't have a name. It was some sort of a wind charm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I knew you could blow through it. So it looked like a tree on there.
It looked like a tree.
And it was gold.
Yeah.
And
so it matches his gold.
Right. So, and I know that wasn't intentional, but for me and for Danny, we really connected with that, with the gold cleats, and the tree was gold. And my Danny at that time, some people may think big deal, his appendix, because that can be an in and out situation. But Danny spent 2 weeks in CHOP because he didn't tell us that the appendix was hurting. He didn't know, obviously, that it was an appendix situation. He ended up getting an infection and he was in CHOP for 2 weeks, lost weight. He couldn't even run for about 6 months. It took him to get back to really any level of athletic ability, which was tough on my son because he was a lacrosse player, basketball player. He just loved movement, and that blowing into that. And you had told him about those women, how you could make a wish and set goals. It was mindset, really. So it was so cool. And the gold cleats, it just aligned in so many ways. And I love that he still has it.
Wow, that's
so
awesome.
Thank you for that. You probably didn't even realize how much of an impact that made on him.
I don't even remember it. It's just, it's funny. That
it was just you being kind.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I just think that was really cool in a way. It wasn't the first time we met, but it flashed into my brain today when the professor said, how did you meet?
That's awesome.
So let's go back a little bit further. Tell me a little bit about your journey. I know you mentioned that you grew up in Drexel Hill and that you were working with big corporations, doing some entrepreneurial adventures for you. Tell me a little bit about who you are as Johnny and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So again, I came from West Africa when I was a very young guy. I was in, I think, first grade, going to second grade when I came, and I grew up in a place called Upper Darby, in the not so great neighborhood, and just stuck to it. Some amazing. What got me through is good parents and amazing teachers. I really, a lot of my core elementary school teachers. I don't know how many people today remember their elementary school teachers, but I remember Mr. Kearns. I remember Ms. Garafola, Beth Ann Garafola. I remember Ms. Peterson, Brad Shaner. I can list them because
I love that.
They're so impactful.
Yeah.
And then going into middle school, again, I went to Beverly Hills Middle School, where I played sports. I was a 3-sport athlete. I played the first year I played soccer because I already played Drexel Hill Raiders football. So I wanted to do something different at school. Then I did track and I did wrestling. 7th grade year, I then just ended up doing football. I didn't do soccer anymore. Then when I got to high school, your sports that you're good at starts to be determined now. So when I was in high school now, I played football and I did wrestling and I did track, but I became really, really good at wrestling between 7th grade to high school. So a 3-sport athlete, really wrestling was the core sport. Got a lot of Division I scholarship offers, ended up selecting a Drexel University offer. And then getting to Drexel and being hurt like before the season even started.
Right.
And then transferring out of Drexel before my freshman year started and going to LaSalle. And then it was at LaSalle doing that transition that I transitioned to rugby and started to play rugby from an athletic perspective. But I was always a student athlete. The student part wasn't that big in elementary school and middle school.
Okay, I'm glad you're being honest with us.
So it was not great. It was not great. But I had a teacher that was my Mr. Brad Shaner, the late Brad Shaner. When I was at elementary school, Mr. Shaner was my music teacher because I played the drums. I had some, mishaps and some troubled times, not being the best student, even though I had some great teachers around me. But my personality made the teachers still like me and say, he's a really good kid, being bad. He always lectured me and as that person that you can be this and you're such a good kid. Why would you, why did you just walk out without a hormone pass to go to the bathroom? Just like silly things like that. But he was such an inspiration to me. In 8th grade, I was in a marching band playing the drums. And then I even started doing concert choir because he said, hey, you need to get more into music. I know you're an athlete, but music will be also great for you to mix your talents. He was just really great there. And I remember he passed away from cancer into my sophomore year of high school. So, he really meant a lot to me. And he always told us, him, Ms. Garofula, Mr. Currens, from a teacher perspective, always told me, you really got to focus on academics, and then also, very interestingly, too, I was adopted. That didn't happen until 9th grade. When I was going into 9th grade, going into 10th grade, when I came to the U.S., my father had already passed. And my mother didn't come because she's in Africa, my birth mother.
Okay.
So I was living with my older brother, and then we had our aunt living around the neighborhood that would pretty much be like the mom. When I got into 9th grade, he left to work for the United Nations.
Your brother?
Yeah, in Afghanistan. So he was leaving the country, and he wanted to see how he could take me with him. So I played those 3 sports, but I also played basketball on PAL. We call it a police academy league.
Okay.
So we played PAL basketball growing up, and while playing PAL basketball, I met my best friend. His name is Denny Ballough. When I met Denny, we just became friends. Like, he was also in his concert band at his school, and I was in Stonehurst Hills concert band, and they are always like the big concert band mix-up for like the best band students in the Upper Darby School District. So we would meet at basketball PAL, and then we'd meet at concert band. We became very close. Our friendship grew even closer. And I used to leave my place in Upper Darby and go hang out and play basketball at his place in Drexel Hill, where he grew up. So one of my family members were leaving. 9th grade, we did our freshman year together. Wild year for us, It's a bunch of knuckleheads, but like really good friends. So when he was moving, I told him, hey, man, like, I'm probably going to be leaving. And he was like, man, you can't leave. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound like it should be good for you. And he convinced his parents so I can move in with them.
Wow.
Yeah. So at first they just, did the guardianship thing where I was just living there. And
was he an only child, or he had siblings?
Yeah, he had a brother.
Wow.
So it was.
And did they knew you already?
Yeah, they knew me
because of all these connections?
Yeah, they knew me because we've always been playing together.
Right.
And I came over a few times. Right. Not to say live at my house.
You just said you came over a few times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they took a risk here a little bit.
Yeah,
it's not like they knew you.
Yeah, I mean, they knew me from like 7th, 8th grade.
Okay.
And it wasn't like it's not like I lived in the neighborhood as a kid. I was in the neighborhood.
Right. It's not like you were at their house all the time.
Yeah, I was at a house a few times.
Right.
But like enough that like every time we had a big sporting event, like I would go over.
Right.
But it wasn't like I lived in the neighborhood. I just like came over every night.
Right. It's not like you were eating dinner there every night.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that was a very difficult time. For them. I think there's an article, Philadelphia Inquirer article, when I graduated, it did something on that. But
did you say okay to this right away?
Yeah, I mean, I was just excited to be there. He was excited.
Yeah,
for us, it was just like
cool.
It's like best friends moving together.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Like for everyone else, there's a lot of things that come along with that. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh man, like you got their personal space.
Yeah.
You got, because I had a room there, but like, again, there was 3 rooms. There was 2 brothers, and the other room was like a TV room. Okay. We had a living room, we had a TV room, but that TV room now became my room. Sure. So like that's personal space, right? People are probably used to watching 2 TVs at the time.
Right. And, they made a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, lots. And not just that, like financial sacrifices, because now you got to.
Another teenager living with you.
That has to eat, that needs clothes.
Right.
Right. So it was just a lot. And then there's a good group of people from my church too that so I'm a Christian. I'm a very big believer. And there was a big group from my church that knew what was going on. So there's a family, the Smurls, McCoys, folks. They're like 3 or 4 families in the church that's like, hey, we're going to help out a little bit financially too. So it was like a village.
Yeah. I do something called the village mentality.
Yeah.
When I go out and do workshops, if I'm working with a team or a school, if I do a workshop, the team parents come after. I call it the village mentality, because whatever I teach your children, you need to know this so that we're all on the same team. It takes a village. And if I go to a school and I run an assembly, I will have a parent night. It could be a week or 2 later, but same thing, because our kids don't always come and tell us these things, but it does take a village. And when you're all on the same team, sometimes we think it's us against them with, school or teens, but when you see people do that, how amazing.
Oh, I was blown away. So comes back to you asking me, like, why is it so easy for me to give and like to donate? It's just because my whole life has been people giving back to me. So after college, I had a really good job at Johnson & Johnson working on a Tylenol professional team and marketing. And then I get bigger. I got bigger into the AI and analytics, and then I ended up going to IBM. And then I ended up being like one of the youngest worldwide executives at IBM. Just hard work and a lot of luck, a lot of things going my way.
Right.
And then I started traveling the world.
Yeah.
And it was pretty amazing. And then promotion every 2 years, the promotion would happen. I stayed there for like 6-7 years. It was amazing, like how fast I came from a leadership development associate, which is like first year enter, but like from a top school and good GPA, blah blah blah, to like a full time, to like a North America lead, to a global lead while I was traveling the world.
Yeah, there's so many things that I could jump in about mindset here. And I know bits and pieces of your story, but for my listeners, I'm going to start, back at your school age there. And some of those teachers and, the Delco in me, I'm just wondering right now. So Mr. Kearns.
Yeah.
Does he happen to be involved with basketball and reffing and things like that?
Yeah.
Small world.
Brian Kearns. Yeah.
Brian Kearns.
Yeah.
Kate Kearns is his wife.
Is his wife. Yeah. He has
and she lived with me in college.
No way.
Delco is such a small place, really. But it's funny. I'll see him sometimes reffing games when my kids are involved in basketball. And when you said Mr. Kearns, I thought it's got to be him. I
think he has a basketball camp.
He does. Yeah. So I just had to ask that. But really cool that you mentioned him a couple times too.
I still keep in touch with him today. Every once in a while,
great
I
guy.
Speak at his class.
I love that.
One of his knuckleheads that made it.
So when you were talking about him and the music teacher
Miss Garafola is another lady from second grade. She took over like my mom.
Okay.
It's funny. And she had her best friend that she taught with in the school. Her name is Miss Peterson. So they were like keep Johnny in track, but like show him like the American culture. So my first baseball game was Miss Garafola, and then and first her name wasn't Miss Garafola. Her name was Penn Whelan.
Right.
And
so she got married.
A guy called Mike.
Okay.
And she was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to the game, but I'm bringing Johnny." So I came to like when they brought me. I mean, they were just dating at the time. They weren't married. I don't know if this. Yeah, I don't think she might have told us.
Right.
But they took me to the game, and this was like amazing. That's my first baseball.
Okay.
So Phillies game.
She was probably trying to see if Mike was cool, figuring it out. Like if he's nice to my students, I'll like him.
Been dating for a while, but I was just like a lot of people saw me in school as like she's like my mom.
Okay.
So a lot of people are like, yeah, that's every time I get in trouble, somehow she will find out. It should be,
What an amazing teacher, though.
And she has 3 kids.
Okay.
Was it 4?
Okay.
But like they're like my oldest is at Westchester now.
Okay.
And, they're like my sisters and brothers, so they're really cool. And then she got married, and then her name got changed to Miss Garafola.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but her name first was Beth Ann.
Yeah. So I love that you brought those teachers up, because I think that it is very important. And I think that you were honest that when you were in school, sometimes you were a knucklehead, you said a couple of times. And I think it's important for my athletes who listen, my parents, my teachers, to see the student, see yourself, and that's not the whole kid. That's not who you are. And when that music teacher and your teacher who had passed said, why are you doing those things? Let yourself see beyond those behaviors. I used to hate when I was in the classroom and someone would say, oh, you have this kid on your roster. This is what he or she did last year, because, see past that. One, those teachers obviously saw past that in you. And I think it's amazing. I love that we gave them a shout out. And then as you continued on, I would love to know if you did anything intentional with mindset. Maybe you didn't even know you were doing it when you were in those early school age, or when you were moving in and adopted, that you did things for yourself or someone taught you
Yeah.
how to level up because you had great success.
Yeah.
Was there mindset involved with that, or did someone help you?
So I didn't learn this until college when I took a minor. My brain moves really fast. So I get bored in school. I found out that the reason for some of my boredness is because I learn the topics pretty quickly.
Okay.
So I ended up doing 2 minors in college.
Not surprised at all.
And 2 minors. So one of my minors was communication management. And then, we learned this theory of like if you have positive why, right? Like why you're doing things.
Sure.
And then you have a positive how. So like how am I going to get to this? Is going to equals a positive so what. And I think that's what's been pretty consistent in my life, especially in high school. Like the why was like, I really wanted to be a college athlete.
Okay.
So I didn't know about changing the world. I didn't care about any of that. All I knew was I want to be a Division I athlete.
Okay.
And then I had a counselor who was also assistant wrestling coach. My wrestling coach at the time was Bob Martin. And we had Dennis Mejia, who was like my skill guy, like taught me all the unique skills to make.
This was in high school?
Yeah, this is high school. So for me in high school, you had like a core of like 3 to 4 guys that made me really successful and become a really good wrestler. You have Bob Martin, who was the head coach, basically just scream at me.
Okay.
Right? But everyone knows like you love Bob, like you just want to make him proud.
Right.
You have Dennis Mejia, who's a super skilled guy.
Okay.
Who knows all of the technique, will stay after with me. So like I had good talent, but we didn't get good skill coming from middle school, from the Drexel side, from the Upper Darby side, versus Drexel Hill, who were really skilled. Then you had Brent Koch and he was and Coach Potter. These were like my strength and conditioning guys. But you had a guy called Mr. Bell, who was like really the assistant coach, and could have easily been the head coach, but he always takes the assistant coach.
Okay.
And he's also a college counselor.
Okay.
So that's why a lot of our wrestlers go to Division I schools.
Yeah.
People don't know that. He retired, but he was a high school counselor, like one of the lead counselors at Upper Darby High School, and he was a wrestling coach.
Right.
So he had Andrew Helms and Wayne and all these big guys go to Penn State, because by the time he spots you and he spots your talent, he's like, all right, who's your high school counselor? So he knew my high school counselor was Miss Brokover, but he already knew like what GPA I needed to get and what extracurriculum.
So important.
He was looking at, oh, you're in band. Great. Don't leave that. Because I'm like, hey, we have wrestling practice, but I have band concert. He's like, try to get the practice done and try to go to a band concert. Because he was so important about keeping me in band, keeping me in concert choir, and still wrestling and still just having that full atmosphere. He did a good job. So in high school, when he said, hey, you're going to think you're going to college? And I said, I want to go Division I coach. He knew like I need all these lines. So he was like, hey, man, you need to make your classes. You can't have that many absentees. You got to stay. So my why at that time was I want to get to Division I. So I need to cut weight. I need to be number 1 in the state. I need to at least be number 1 in Delco.
Okay.
I got to get out of Central Leagues. I got to make states a few times. And if I can place in states or place in Central League title, will be great. So that was my thought process at that time. So it was be good at wrestling.
This is your how.
Yeah,
this is my weight and get to the
so why was becoming becoming a Division I college athlete. How is through wrestling, through cutting weight, coming to class, getting the grades. And I
heard you say staying after and putting the work in.
Yes, you got to stay after.
Yeah, I heard that too, which is really mindset.
I had to do a lot, and there would be times where because there was a few good kids in the States, and how PA like Delco works is a lot of us are also friends out. Like we wrestle together off season, right? So a lot of us were talking to each other, like what weight class you're going to go at.
Okay.
So like Will Resnick was a good buddy of mine. Joe Marino. We were battling in the same weight class all year.
Okay.
So our records were okay, but whenever we would face each other, one person would win and the other person would lose, and somebody would win this time. So we knew that. But so when states were coming around, you were like, okay, well, you're going to stay at 152. I'm going to.
So you would plan it out.
Yeah, you will. I mean, the guys are going to compete no matter what.
Sure.
But like we knew like what you had to get to, and then when you knew what you had to get to, you had to wrestle.
Strategic. I mean,
So, I mean, I got over 100 wins. I got my name on the boards because we worked so hard at being at that weight class, and just some of us wrestlers were probably the most greediest people because like we suck weight. All of us suck weight, by the way. We suck weight to get to that weight class. And then right after that, we devour the food. Okay. And then you got to get back next week for the next week. Right. So, so that was it was a mental challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was very difficult. And I say that because a lot of people ask, like, me getting to my role in the corporate world was definitely like a lot of things had to fall into place. But I was able to get in that role because I did a lot of grunt work, because I told myself there's nothing as hard as losing 10 pounds.
I love that you just connected that.
Yeah. There's nothing harder than losing 10 pounds, 15 pounds sometimes. We'll be at tournaments and you will not eat because you're like, I was at 145 at States. I had to cut like a lot of weight to get to 145. So after you ate, you went up you shot up 7 pounds.
Right.
And then, so after day one, once you're in the semis, you got to weigh in again.
Okay.
So you would wrestle all day. Then the next night you would go run to make sure that you weighed in right. And then you have to wrestle that same day.
Yeah. So the amount of hard work and dedication.
There was no work you can tell me to do, to stay after work, to do some work in the night, to create a presentation, to pull data, to build a code. That's harder than that part of my life. Even pledging in college was pretty easy. They were like, guys were like, this is so hard. I'm like, no, I had to wrestle back to back.
You're like, I'm a wrestler.
Exactly.
You can't say hard to me. I love that because I tell athletes all the time that you gain skills along the way from every sport you're in, but that is a perfect connection to what you did as an athlete and how that skill transfers over. Yeah. So if you had advice to a coach, let's start with the coaches first, and then we're going to go to the parents and the athletes. What would you say to a coach to help that athlete who comes to them and says, this is my why? And it doesn't necessarily have to be college. It could be any reason why they want to be, whatever their why is. What would you say? How should that coach approach this athlete? Let's talk about a high school athlete.
Yeah, I think the coach, number one, should know how others have succeeded before. Like they should know a winning formula.
Right.
And then they will have to adjust that winning formula to the kid. Okay, so like I said.
So no copy and paste, right? It's not going to be the same.
So
thank goodness.
With all my team, by the way, we won the Central League title that year. But with all my team, we had a kid called Joe Kearney who was so freaking good. Okay. He was a technical wrestler. He was not the strongest, but his skill, he had so many wins. His skill was amazing. He started wrestling in like first grade, second grade.
Oh, wow.
His father was a wrestler.
Okay.
His brother's a wrestler.
It was in the DNA.
Yes. Okay. So I didn't start wrestling till like 6th, 7th grade.
Right. And so you're a different kind of wrestler.
Yes. That Coach Bell, couldn't come to me and say, look, technically, I need you to win this. He had to come to me and say, look, there's these 4 big tournaments. Whatever you do, if you don't win all these other tournaments in place, you need to win these tournaments. Okay. And we're not going to win it with skills because most of these guys, by the time you get to your top level, are probably more skilled than you. So you're going to use it with strength and you're going to use it with the fact that you have more endurance than most people.
Okay.
So it was taking that why, I want to get to Division I, and then doing the how. And then when writing my essays and I was getting college visits, he told me the story to tell them. The story is I started wrestling 7th, 8th grade. So I have more endurance than most people, and I have the strength of anyone I'm going to wrestle.
Right.
And if you, Mr. Coach, bring me into your program, I'm going to look for a skill. You need to put me up with a technical wrestler that can really build my skills. And that was the story that was told to Jack Childs at Drexel. He went crazy because I was one of the first wrestlers that wasn't placed top 4 in states and got a really good scholarship to Drexel.
Okay.
Because Jack Childs saw that I made it to states and I was making the second round. And he was like, "Oh, who's that kid?" That's like, and then the coach told me, "Yeah, that's
great advice for the coach."
Yeah. So know the how,
right?
But adjust the formula to that student,
right?
So that you can have a positive. So what?
Yeah, because I think sometimes you think, well, this is how we do it here, and every kid, every athlete is unique. Mm-hmm. You are not going to be able to copy and paste for every athlete. And the most successful coaches need to know that. Mm-hmm. And is it hard work? Sure. But if you want to leave a legacy, you need to know your athletes. And, I think that anyone who's a coach right now needs to be pausing, writing that down and stealing it if you're not already doing it.
So have the why. It can be athletic why. It can be have educational why. They want to get to this school.
Right.
So they need to get these grades. And then adjust to them. You might have kids that are like, I want to go to Harvard. And
sure.
But they're not going to have all A's.
Right. You have to have an honest conversation.
You got to have an honest conversation. Say, okay, well, since you're not going to have all A's here is how we compensate. Like you're going to have you need to have a really good volunteering story. You're going to have to be building in Ridley. You're going to have to be doing it every food bank.
Right.
You have to go to every police outing.
Your application has to shine.
And it has to show that, hey, it needs to show it's the so what effect, right? It's like, it's got to show that, hey, this kid may not have the best GPA. You got to make someone always question. I don't have the best GPA, but he went to Panama to go build houses. Okay, he feeds the homeless so he's doing so much. Maybe he doesn't put that much time in getting a GPA because he just wants to change the world. So now they're looking at your application differently.
Right. You have to stand out.
You have to stand out.
The so what piece is really cool.
Yeah.
And you take that with you now in everything you do in business.
And everything. And so once I've learned that theory in college, I started applying it to post-college.
Right.
Like
I'm going to steal it just so you know. I think it's genius.
Yeah, I stayed and it's a theory. Some guy did the theory, but it's also a communication theory, so it matches it.
Right.
So it says a positive why, a positive how equals a positive so what. In college, I was like, listen, I don't want to just get in a job. I need to be in like a leadership development program.
Right.
Because I started hearing about some of these students that get out of like Harvard and Columbia and they go into what they call the Glassdoor program. Okay. So there's all these companies that have leadership development programs.
Okay.
They call it a Glassdoor because you're fast tracked through the company.
Meaning you get promotions quickly.
Yeah, meaning you're exposed to upper management leadership.
Glassdoor meaning what? That you can see it quickly happening?
You're going through, like everyone's going through the regular door, but you're going through these leadership programs are very, very difficult to come in. Out of the Pennsylvania area, they put like UPenn kids in it. Sometimes, if they're not going to do UPenn kids, they're going to go Villanova kids. So then I started looking at like, how the heck are they getting in here? Like, what's the formula? So like that was my why. My why was like I did not want to go to a regular program because I had but I'm going to be in the corporate world. I wanted to end up adding a second major. While everyone was graduating, I stayed an extra semester.
So your so what?
My soul was
shining when people were looking at you.
So when I did this, I had an extra internship too.
Okay.
And I had a co-op, which is you leave campus, and I didn't care. Like everybody wanted to graduate in time. Everyone's cared about starting the first. I didn't care.
Right.
Because I was like, my why is I want to be in one of these leadership development programs. And I can't get into one of these through just being the top student at LaSalle or Temple, or like they're taking UPenn first if they're doing here. Right. Most of the programs, they're like, if you look at AWS, Microsoft, like the technology companies, unless it's Comcast, they're looking at other people. But even Comcast, they're not looking at Comcast going to take a Penn kid over before they look at everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
Then if you get lucky, if you're from Villanova, like you're next after Penn. Gotcha. Like if you look at the school rankings here, right?
Sure. Like if we're going to be honest, right? Got to be honest.
Are you a coach or parent looking to boost confidence, build resilience, and create a winning mindset? It's time to discover the champion within. I'm Kate McCauley, founder of The Champion Within, and I'm here to help you transform your mindset, reach your potential, and thrive in school, sports, and life. With 20 years of experience as an educator and a mindset specialist, I know what it takes to empower teams and individuals to step up, stay focused, and perform at their best. Book a free call with me today. Let's learn how the Champion Within programs can be customized to meet your needs. You can visit my site at shop.danunow.com, or even easier, go to the show notes, click on that link, and book your call.
I was like,
so what would you tell that athlete or student? Maybe it's not an athlete listening. I think most of the listeners are probably athletes, coaches, parents of athletes, and a lot of teachers, some business owners, now that I'm thinking of some people who send me messages. What are you telling that parent or maybe the athlete? I hear the so what for the coach. I feel like when I'm hearing you that you're saying the shoulds and the supposed to's. I have to graduate on time. All the people saying, I want to look at me. I did this quickly, or I'm with everyone else. What would be your advice if someone came to you and said, well, everyone says I should do it this way? If someone approached you, what would you tell them?
It's a different formula depending on your why. The how is always geared towards the why. And that's going to equal the positive so what.
Right.
So if you don't have that why figured out, then you have a problem.
How can they figure out the why?
Again, I think it's going to come from inspirations. I think I think the why is even going to change, as you're living. Because my why was like, I want to get I want a leadership program. I want to make a heck load of money
Sure.
when I get out. So like that was my why. And then my mom passed, and then I wanted to go to Africa and give back.
Right.
So I left this amazing job when I was at the thing I wanted was that leadership.
Right.
I was at the top at AWS, which is paying a great amount of money, and then I just lost it, and I had to resettle. And now when I came back from Africa 8 months ago, my why was like, now I want to have this greater.
Now hold on a minute. Don't skip over the Africa part.
Yeah, no, that was
because
fun.
You just said something that I think I want my listeners, I know I want my listeners to hear.
Yeah.
I think it's important for everyone to hear something that you just said, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you said your why can change.
Yes. It can,
and I think it should change.
Yeah, it changes.
It would be strange if your why, if my why, one of my listeners, athlete, parent, coach, if we had the same why all the time, life would be boring, for one. And you need to keep being inspired. And when we do new things, you and I were just talking before this podcast, I thought I would never go back into a school and do things again. And then I step in and do things with students, and I think, well, I sure do love it here, but I love being with corporate people too.
Yeah.
So your why evolves and it changes, and it should, and it's okay. You don't have to be on a straight path. I think that I want people to hear that, because you quickly went past that, and don't go past the Africa part too quick.
No, it doesn't.
Because before we come back, because we're definitely going to talk about what you're doing now, but you left that big corporate job and you went to Africa. Tell us, one, what your why was and what you did there, and how these skills as an athlete helped you mindset wise.
Yeah. So when I was in Africa, it was more about pressing the reset button, figure out what my why in life was.
I love that.
And why was it that?
Right.
And a lot of the answer left to money. I was like, but is that the real thing? And it was a mental shutdown for me. It was to really watch the water. I was born by the river. So it's good to see where I've never been there before. So it's good to go and see where I was born. It's
Very
good.
Cool.
Or not that I remember I was there as a kid, but
sure.
So it's really, really good. And then it was also about giving back, because like when I was in Ridley and we're doing that stuff, I was giving back a little bit, but what if you're giving back completely and like making no money doing it and then trying to understand? So then I start to establish some relationships in Africa and start to learn the culture and the people. And then I had this the startup, because I'm in tech, so I can't go too long without a tech.
Sure.
So then I had this tech entrepreneurship, which is called SNS company. Then I built this technology to help people from Africa give back to their family members. And when that happened for me, it was that I always wanted to do something in Africa. Mm-hmm. And when this happened, I was like, this is a sign from God. That's like, this is when you just leave everything. You focus on this thing you wanted to do. Because when I was here in the U.S. and when I got out of college and I started making money, I used to send my family member money in Africa, and it was being misused, and there was all these challenges with just transacting money and trying to ship goods to them and then I was thinking about this business, this technology startup, and then when this happened to me, I wanted to reset, and I didn't do it at first because it's not like a big money making business. It's almost like it's like a social entrepreneurship. It's not a nonprofit. It's profitable, but you're not going to make more time than when I was doing it. Right. So when this happened, that was my why. It was like, this is a chance for me to reset, go back home, and build this business model out. I ran this business for about a year and a half. And
what did you learn during that time?
I learned
so many things, I'm sure.
It's a lot of tests.
If you had
a lot of money that can be made out of it if you're focused. We had like close to $1 million in transactional revenue. Wow! So it became bigger than I thought. And then professors from Villanova, everyone started to notice how big this social entrepreneurship.
Sure, right. This little thing that you were going to do.
And they asked me to come over and be an entrepreneur resident around international law and AI/ML.
Here at Villanova.
Yes, at Villanova University Law for the grad students. And then
I saw them present something to you today.
Yeah, it's a little.
You're very humble.
Yeah, it's a little.
But
little something.
Let's give a little shout out to that because I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like it's for being like an adjunct here, the entrepreneur law and fellow. So it's looks like a law degree, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm just
but you're
guy. Yes. But it was nice.
Simple guy. Yeah. You're very humble. I love it. But I mean, you are making a big difference here.
Yes. The university and then And then when I came back, I want to transition and put someone else to run my company. So I'm still trying to figure that part out and what it's going to be. And while I was doing that, of course, a lot of people know me for my movement and my thought perspective on cognitive AI and cognitive technologies. So a pretty large consulting firm asked me to be a technology advisor to some large client. Now I'm back in the tech space, corporate.
You just
tech
can't
space.
get out of it. It just keeps drawing you back in. You're good at it.
Yeah, working with Fortune 500.
And how does your skills as an athlete, your mindset help you with that?
I think, again, that wrestling days of just being, because you're going to ask me, how the heck can you teach 2-3 times a week at Nova and then go do all of that and still work with demanding Fortune 500? Because it's, the late nights, the hustle, the trying to understand that. I think as an athlete, you most times learn how to communicate yourself, communicate with your teammates, communicate leading that team. Our team is large. Our consulting team is like 2,000 plus individuals.
Wow.
So I have some large projects where I'm managing 30 to 40 people at a time, really, really smart people, the Harvard graduates and some of those smart guys, but trying to manage them as a team player. So I think that team, that leadership plays in. And I think that just get her done attitude, especially when you're looking at the space of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cognitive computing. There's a lot of speculations. There's a lot of, can we actually do it? And is it going to work? It's still having that mentality of like, yes, we can, and we are, and here's how we're going to do it, and let's push it, and let's push this button. So I think
it's that wrestler in you.
Yeah, and then it's that competitive athlete, track and wrestling. So I think that's been great for me. And then I think one thing about being an athlete, an international traveler, and an international athlete, by the way, it's, looking at this, a lot of events, sporting events.
Right. You were talking about that today. I got to sit and listen today. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, it's the idea of creating this ultimate fan experience for international fans. And luckily for me, I'm not just a fan. I'm also an athlete. So I was thinking about it from like an international athlete perspective, international fan perspective. And, oh, by the way, domestic fan. Think about someone that's going into Dallas from Philadelphia that wants to watch the Dallas Cowboy game. You want to have that fan experience with the players, but you also want to have the fan experience with the space. Maybe you want to eat some Texas barbecue, like where the location. So it's just creating that ultimate fan experience from a Gen AI perspective, where it's all clipping together. It's
pretty epic.
Yeah,
so I got to sit in and listen to some of that. And you were talking to a lot of the Villanova Law students, and I just got to sit in as a guest. And my eyes were probably growing each time you and Thomas were speaking about it, because there's so much possibility there of what's going on in the city. Because I travel, if my kids are coming with me, my husband, what we want to eat, where we want to go, things,
transportation methodology,
right? Transportation, all of the things, and
fan experience,
right? And when I get to go to events, that's what people want. They want to experience the city, and the best way to do that is when you can talk to someone there and say, tell me what's good.
Yes, you're local. What's the local
Tell
place?
me what's good. And when you can give that to someone in the palm of their hand,
yes, it's going to be
genius.
So just advising on things like that. Again,
it's really cool.
That's taking like your athletic background, because you know what you look for.
Right.
And you know what's interesting too? As an athlete, you play AAU sport and you do summer wrestling, you travel for those things.
You do.
You go to different cities. Your coach is always like, we're going to this restaurant, and it's always the most rare Red Lobster or Pizza Hut. It's never like, imagine when you're on, and I always thought about that. Like when I was a kid, I was like, man, I wish I knew what like these people in South Carolina eat. Like I always hear about like good fried chicken and good Southern
food. You're at
a
tournament game and you're eating some like crappy pizza somewhere.
We're having a pizza for dinner. I'm like, when my parents and I talked about me coming to South Carolina.
I didn't even think of that until you just said that, but it is so true.
When they think about me coming to South Carolina, I thought we were going to come to South Carolina and
experience the city. And when I'm thinking about this, because my son, when we would be at tournament games, you win a game and then they tell you, well, we won. And we're back here at 3:00. So you have this amount of time.
30 minutes. So what can I do in 30 minutes?
Right. And how can I get there and quick? And that solves everything for you. And I do want a good piece of pizza, like not for anything, but if I spent money for this tournament team and you're buying the shoes, you're paying to play. I mean, I pay the entrance fee to watch my kid.
Yep.
I always laugh at that. I'm like, really? I paid the fee. I'm paying $5 to get in. Could I at least find a good piece of pizza or good dinner? So I love that. There's so many possibilities here for lots of different people. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah,
I think it's
fun.
Just
it's fun, and
it's going to be fun, and it's going to grow, and it's going to be exciting to watch that happen.
Yeah, so that's what's new for me. It's like thinking about new things that's going to affect a lot of people in a positive way, and then not really caring who gets credit for it,
right?
And just letting it doesn't matter if an organization gets credit for coming up with this great idea.
That's the how and the so what.
It's just a positive.
Look at this cool thing that happens, and everybody gets to experience it.
Oh, we're doing this, The
ripple effects.
I remember when we were doing some stuff with American Airlines and IBM, and I think this is on record. So IBM did a lot of things for American Airlines, and it's cool to watch people log on to. You're traveling and they log into the app and they're checking in, and they're like, yeah, that's our team. We were part of some of those things.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
America has a great development team, but some of our software and some of the things we did was a part of that. And you don't have to take credit. You just sit in the back and you're like, yeah. So that's what's fun for me these days.
Yeah, and I mean, you're part of somebody's journey. You make my weekend better when I go to Philly or Dallas, or I'm at an AAU tournament.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not like you have to say, oh, I did that, but to watch that happen. Let's say I post on Instagram and say, thank goodness I did this and I used the app. That's good. That's going to be really cool for you to see that happen. Yep. And then I just think, my goodness, once teenagers and different people get a hold of this thing, I mean, it's really going to be cool. I'm excited for you. Well, I'm not going to keep you here forever. Before I ask you the last question that I ask everyone, where should people connect with you? Are there links, LinkedIn or different things if people could follow along and stay connected? Where should that be?
Yeah, so I think most people should stay connected with me professionally.
Well, of course, we don't want anyone reaching out personally. That could get crazy.
Professionally, I'm at Johnny Ballough Sneh on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I think I keep my Facebook pretty clean as well. So my Facebook's also Johnny Ballough Sneh. So it's JOHNNY.
Okay.
And it's Ballough, BALLOUGH, and it's Sneh. And you have to make sure it's the one that's Johnny Ballough Sneh, because I think there's a few John Snehs out there.
Gotcha. That are not you.
Yeah. So
I'll drop the links too in the show notes so people can click on that.
First, middle, last name for Facebook and for LinkedIn. Those are my professional. My Instagram it's not professional. So if you want to see what I do out of my professional life, you can follow that. But specifically for some things that I'm doing, especially if you're in a business, a startup or business that's focused on searching your journey through generative AI and machine learning and more cognitive technologies, I post a lot of those things on LinkedIn, looking at Azure, AWS, all the different other large IBM, all the big technology platforms, but looking at what businesses are doing there, that's a lot of stuff that I post on my LinkedIn.
Yeah. So my listeners definitely should be following if they're interested in those things, whether you're a young listener. I just had someone come on talking about how college students, not just athletes, but college students have to build up that LinkedIn and the network. So
have to build that up.
If that's something that you're interested in, I'll have the links right there in the show notes. So you can just click on that and follow John. And, if you end up on his Instagram and you see some fun stuff there, maybe. But we'll put LinkedIn. Yeah, don't judge him. But definitely LinkedIn. We'll get that on there for everybody.
In 2026 is a big year.
Yeah.
Sporting all around the country. So look out for me. That I think I'll be doing one or two things around 2026.
Yeah, I think you might be doing a couple things.
We'll see. If some of these things goes through budgets and governments and people, but some of these budgets go through.
We're going to shift that actually, since I do the mindset stuff.
Yes,
not if.
When.
Not if. There you go.
When these things go through.
When these things go through, you're going to be hearing about it, whether or not you take credit or not. When these things go through,
we'll do it.
Yeah, we're going to shift that. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests. If you had the opportunity to swap lives with anyone, dead or alive, for 1 week only, who would you choose and why?
If I had one person, dead or alive, I would choose Steve Jobs. I think Steve Jobs was revolutionary. His style of leading may have been really aggressive, but what he's done to technology and life, I think is pretty amazing. I think, taking something that is so super coding, and, some of the leaders at ChatGPT are doing the same thing. Taking something, those are like really advanced, sophisticated algorithms and sophisticated backend technologies. And when I went to IBM in 2014 and we're working on Watson, I remember saying, how the heck are we going to get like normal people to do this? And like, that's what Steve Jobs had to do when he first started with computers.
Yeah.
Right. It was like this sophisticated, and it was more sophisticated, and they had to be more sophisticated than the computers and the technology that computer gurus were using, because computer gurus, like, we can work around code if something is messed up. We know how to, but like when you're bringing this to consumers and everyday consumers, the front end has to be slimmed down, and it has to be super user and friendly, and it had to be super easy.
Right. Can't scare people.
And oh, by the way, when you think about this thing in the front end, that means anytime something is simple in the front end, it means the back end is even more sophisticated. So the way he ran that thought process, the way he ran the students, the team that were building that, to try to say, hey, slim this down. It's impossible. It's so hard. Just to spend 1 week in his life,
right?
And 1 week expanding, you would just learn so much. And we try to learn from videos and watching his movies and everything, but that's not a life.
Right. Inside his brain would be epic.
Yeah. So even like, some of these apps we're building, like the fan engagement thing I was telling you about. Typically, when I look at that user interface and you're building, you would say, okay, I'm going to have something here for transportation. I'm going to have something here for restaurant, and I'm going to have something here for sightseeing. And I'm going to have you click down and then you get the options, or I'm going to.
Right.
But is that really what the users want? I think they want to say, I want to see this. And they want that to pull down. Then they want to click on, okay, what are transportation route? Right. Then they want to be able to call on Uber, but they don't want to have that separate. So it's just thinking about it backwards, and now using technology and the back end sophisticated to make it. So I think spending a week in his life, understanding how he does these things, understanding what he does before his launch, after his launch when things are messed up. I think I would want to do the week. Like, I want to do 3 days before the launch. Okay.
You're picking the actual week. Yes, I love it. I love it.
I want to do 3 days before the launch, because you got to figure out, is this code going to work?
Right.
What are the last correct? If we're going to do a dev code, so it's going to be a live code, or we're going to do offline. What are we actually coding?
Sure.
The day of the presentation itself.
Okay.
Presenting and seeing how the.
What does he do that day?
Every time he presents to the world, something big happens.
It does.
So seeing that, and then seeing the 2 days after effect, because sometimes now the world wants everything, but the shit he just presented isn't ready yet.
Yeah.
So how does he deal with that demand?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it would be epic.
My week would be a few days before presentation, so I can see what the code actually looks like. The week of the presentation.
Can you imagine presenting like
just
him? I mean, it would be.
Yeah, just to see what the world is going to do.
Yeah,
and then
the after effect.
When the demands are there and they're like, hey, what's this thing? What you say is real. How do you handle those press conferences?
Pressure.
How do you communicate?
Right.
With that? How do you communicate with your team? How do you communicate with the press and let the people
They want it, and we don't have it.
How do you decide the timelines? Yeah.
I think that's an awesome answer. I love it, and love that you got super specific. The exact days that you're going to do it.
Very specific about that.
I love it. Well, is there any last advice that you would give our listeners? No. You gave so much wisdom. Thank you for all of that. But is there anything else that you want to say or share?
I think that I really believe in. I told you that story about me graduating later. And a lot of my colleagues, that my classmates who were graduated, started their job, and at the time I was like, darn, I wish I got a whole nother semester, 4 more months, and these guys are already ahead and they can buy drinks at bars, and I still got to ask them for a drink, but then when I got promoted, and then I got promoted again, and I was at like 30 years old as a director, while all my guys and people that I grew up with were like associates.
Sure.
Then it was worth it. I think make your why fluctuate your plan, customize it to meet your why. Right? Nothing comes out of the box. Customize it to meet customize your how to meet your why, and then just stick to it, and don't be envious of someone else's shine. Let them shine their time, and you're gonna get your time when it is your time. You make sure you really execute and you don't let down on it.
I love that. I feel like we had 5 or 6 quotes in there that we're going to have to pull out. That is great advice. I love it. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I loved the conversation. Thank you for listening to us on The Champion Within. Make sure you go down to those show links, click on them, follow, and pay attention, because 2026, you're going to see some epic things probably before that. But we will definitely talk again, I'm sure. And thank you again for your time.
No problem.
Thanks for hanging out with me today. Whether you are going to coach, teach, cheer from the stands, or hit the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show because we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and some sanity in our busy lives. Go unleash that champion within you, one step at a time. I'm rooting for you always.